The first kick came without warning. Logan Ashford's polished leather shoe drove mercilessly into the stomach of the pregnant woman, the sound of impact echoing against the gleaming marble floor. The force knocked the air from Clara's lungs, and she crumpled instantly, falling to her knees as if the world itself had betrayed her. Her arms instinctively wrapped around her belly, desperate, protective, primal. White towels, stacked neatly only moments earlier, scattered across the ground like torn doves, a haunting contrast to the brutality that had just unfolded. Logan's friends erupted into laughter, their voices shrill and cruel, the glow of smartphone screens lighting up their sneering faces. Every second of her humiliation was being captured, broadcast in real time to the digital void where millions of eyes would soon feast on it. Yet in that chaos, Clara did something no one expected. She raised her head. Her hair clung to her damp face. Her breath was shallow, but her eyes were steady, calm, defiant. Not a single tear fell. She looked directly into Logan's face, the heir to an empire, the spoiled son of untouchable wealth, and for the briefest moment, it was as if the room itself held its breath. And then she spoke. Her voice was soft, almost fragile, but the weight of her words crashed into the silence like thunder. "My husband is coming." The phrase didn't sound like a plea. It didn't sound like a warning. It sounded like a prophecy. The words slithered into every ear in that glittering restaurant, leaving a chill that even the chandelier's golden glow couldn't warm. Logan, who had mocked, kicked, and laughed without consequence his entire life, felt something alien gnaw at his chest. Unease. For the first time, arrogance gave way to a flicker of fear. Around them, the scene shifted. Guests in designer suits and glittering jewelry stood frozen, eyes darting nervously. Some whispered indignantly, but their voices never rose beyond a murmur. None of them stepped forward. Not one dared intervene. Instead, more phones emerged from pockets and handbags. The lenses, unblinking and hungry, captured her pain, his cruelty, and the strange, unshakable calm of a woman who refused to break. Slowly, almost ceremoniously, Clara began to move. Her knees trembled. Her body bore the mark of violence, but her spirit carried a dignity that seemed impossibly out of place. She picked up the towels one by one, her movements deliberate, as though every gesture were an act of defiance. Her right hand never left her belly, shielding her unborn child with unwavering determination. When she finally turned to leave, the silence that followed was deafening, charged with tension, thick with unanswered questions. The crowd exchanged uneasy glances. They had witnessed cruelty before, perhaps even turned a blind eye to it, but there was something different in the air tonight, something in the way she walked away. Not defeated, not shattered, but unyielding, left an invisible mark on every soul present. And beneath that silence, a question burned like fire in the minds of all who saw her. Who was her husband? No one there could have imagined the answer, and no one yet understood the storm that single sentence had unleashed. A storm destined to tear the glittering Ashford dynasty apart. The third news channel broadcast something no one in the Ashford mansion could have imagined, angry protests already gathering in front of Ashford Enterprises headquarters. Hand-painted banners, furious chants, and live interviews with outraged citizens filled the screen. "My God," Edward whispered, barely recognizing the empire he had built. His phone had become a weapon of destruction, vibrating non-stop with messages. Contracts terminated, investors fleeing in panic, longtime associates severing ties. By 7 a.m., 20 senior employees had submitted resignations. Household staff simply did not show up. The dynasty was collapsing from within. The morning news opened with their scandal, flashing images of Logan's kick across the screen while experts in human rights and women's protection condemned the brutality. Upstairs, Logan awoke not to luxury, but to his father's furious roar. "Logan, get down here immediately!" He stumbled into the study, only to find Edward pacing like a lion deprived of its cage. Screens on the wall flashed graphs of free-falling stock values. In just 6 hours, the empire had bled 30% of its worth. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Edward thundered. 40 years of sacrifice destroyed in one night." Logan shrugged, arrogance undisturbed. "Dad, she was just some annoying waitress." People will forget in a week that was when Edward exploded. For the first time in 22 years, he screamed at his son with unrestrained fury. "That annoying waitress is costing us $50 million. The door creaked open. Michael Sterling, the PR director, entered, nervous, pale. Beside him walked an older man, silver hair neatly combed, wearing a simple yet immaculate suit. His presence was like a storm cloud in the room. "Edward," Michael began, voice taut, "this is Attorney Salvatierra. He represents the assaulted woman." The attorney's eyes were steel gray, sharp enough to pierce through pretense. "Mr. Ashford," he said, calm but commanding, "I am here to deliver my client's conditions. Conditions that could salvage what remains of your reputation." "How much?" Edward snapped. "Name her price." Salvatierra shook his head. "This is not about money." "My client rejects financial compensation." Logan snorted. "So what does she want? A pathetic apology? A hospital wing with her name on it?" The attorney regarded him with icy contempt. "She wants real justice." Transformative justice. From his briefcase, he produced a folder. "Your son will serve as a volunteer at St. Raphael Community Hospital, in the maternity ward with low-income mothers. 2 months. No excuses, no absences, no privileges." "This is absurd," Logan barked. "I'm not scrubbing toilets or touching dirty sheets." Salvatierra's expression never wavered. "The alternative is a lawsuit for aggravated assault, grievous bodily harm, psychological damage, and social discrimination. Compensation alone could reach $120 million. Add legal costs, add media pressure, and the ruin of your legacy is guaranteed." The room seemed to shrink around Edward. His empire was already in free fall. He could barely breathe. Then came the final blow. "My client's condition is absolute. The community service ends only when her child is born. Until then, your son must obey, completely." "And if we agree," Edward rasped, "if he shows genuine reform and fulfills every condition," said Salvatierra, "she may withhold legal action." Logan looked as though he had stepped into a nightmare. "Dad, you can't seriously—" But Edward's gaze was on the monitors, on the plummeting numbers, on the headlines calling for boycotts. His voice cracked, heavy with defeat. "I accept." And just like that, for the first time in his pampered life, Logan Ashford was condemned to work. The very next day, his arrogance collided with reality. St. Raphael Community Hospital smelled of disinfectant, of fatigue, of suffering. Logan pulled up in his latest model BMW, sliding into the doctor's parking lot. Immediately, 2 security guards approached. "Sir, that spot is reserved for medical staff." "I am medical staff," Logan lied, flashing the authorization letter signed by Salvatierra. "Volunteers park on the street." The guard's tone was iron. First humiliation. Inside, the head nurse waited. Martha Collins, 50 years old, eyes carved by decades of exhaustion and resolve, had no patience for spoiled brats. She thrust a faded green uniform into his hands. "You're the famous Logan Ashford. Out there, your last name means everything. In here, it means nothing. Here, there is only work." She assigned him to the lowest of tasks, mopping floors, changing soiled sheets, serving food, emptying trash cans. By the end of the day, when ordered to clean a bathroom, Logan sneered in disgust. "I don't touch that." The war between privilege and reality had only just begun. "Then go home," Martha said coldly, her arms crossed. "But understand this. If you walk out, tomorrow morning, you'll be standing in front of a judge with a lawsuit worth millions hanging over your head." Grinding his teeth, Logan bent down and cleaned the bathroom. His hands used to holding champagne flutes and steering sports cars, burned with chemical blisters. His back screamed from constant bending, and his feet swelled from hours of standing on hard hospital floors. Nurses regarded him with distant professionalism. Doctors ignored him altogether. The patients, however, stared. Some whispered, recognizing the disgraced son from the viral video. In the first week, Logan tried to pull rank. He cornered an intern doctor one afternoon. "Do you even know who I am?" The young man didn't blink. "Yes, I know exactly who you are. You're the volunteer who will take these blood samples to the lab." Now, Logan carried them in silence. By the second week, Logan's frustration boiled over. He called his father in rage. "Dad, this is torture. I'm working like a servant." "You're working like everyone else," Edward snapped, "and you'll keep working until that woman's child is born." It was in the third week that fate twisted the knife. Clara appeared at the hospital for a prenatal checkup. She wore a modest maternity dress, sensible shoes, her hair tied back in a plain ponytail. No jewels, no makeup. And yet she radiated a quiet beauty money could never purchase. Their eyes met in the hallway. Clara looked at him, not with hatred, but with a curious calm that unsettled him. "Mrs. Harper," a nurse greeted warmly. "This way, please." Logan watched as she walked past, hands instinctively cradling the very belly he had once endangered. Something heavy stirred in his chest, an emotion he didn't recognize, an emotion dangerously close to shame. In the days that followed, Logan began to notice what he had once ignored. Maria, 16, abandoned by her boyfriend, yet fiercely protective of her unborn child. Carmen, mother of 4, struggling alone while her husband searched for work across the border. Rosa, working 12-hour days as a maid to afford her pregnancy care. Women who fought every day, who suffered, who persevered. Women whose dignity shamed him more than any punishment. One evening, exhausted, he returned to his small volunteer desk and found a pair of new latex gloves waiting. No note, but he knew. Clara had seen the cracks on his hands. The gesture kept him awake that night. His parents had given him cars, trips, money, everything but compassion. And here was a woman he had hurt, noticing what no one else had ever cared to see. The next morning, while filing medical charts, he caught sight of her again. Clara sat in the waiting room, one hand stroking her belly in soothing circles, her lips whispering softly to the life within her. A tender glow illuminated her face. For the first time in his life, Logan Ashford felt the weight of guilt. For the first time, he questioned what kind of man he had truly been. Meanwhile, on the 42nd floor of Ashford Enterprises, a meeting was called in the vast office of Edward Ashford. The glass walls looked down upon the city like a throne above an empire, yet Edward felt no power, only dread. Salvatierra entered, carrying his leather briefcase. By his side walked Clara, now 8 months pregnant, her steps slow but graceful, her navy blue dress simple yet commanding. Her presence filled the ostentatious office with a gravity money couldn't buy. "Mr. Ashford," Salvatierra began, voice deliberate, "the time has come to reveal the truth." Edward scowled. "What truth?" "I thought we were only discussing legal matters. This goes far beyond a lawsuit," the attorney replied, spreading photographs and documents across the marble table. The first photo froze Edward in place. A man in military uniform, about 45, with the same steely gray eyes, the same strong jawline. Yet a nobility in his expression Edward had lost long ago. Salvatierra spoke with precision. "Edward, allow me to formally introduce your sister-in-law, Clara Harper Ashford." The words detonated in the room like an avalanche. Silence crashed down, suffocating, inescapable. "Clara is married to your older brother, Daniel Ashford, the very brother who severed all ties with you 15 years ago because of your ruthless way of treating employees and workers. Edward felt the ground tilt beneath him, as though the skyscraper itself were swaying. Daniel. Daniel is dead. He died during that military mission in Iraq. We buried an empty coffin. Daniel is alive, Clara declared with unwavering firmness. Her voice carried the weight of truth. For 12 long years he served on classified missions. National security barred all communication with family. Silence was his duty. Salvatierra placed more documents across the marble table, his movements deliberate, his expression unreadable. 1 year ago, Daniel retired with full honors. He and Clara married 8 months ago, intent on rebuilding a bridge with this family. But when Daniel learned of the restaurant incident, everything changed. With trembling hands, Edward picked up one of the photographs. It showed Daniel in a perfectly tailored suit, standing beside Clara in her wedding dress. Their smiles radiated genuine joy, surrounded by comrades in uniform, in a modest celebration filled with sincerity rather than extravagance. "Why didn't he come to me himself?" Edward asked, his voice breaking. "Because he needed to know what kind of man you had become," Clara replied, her eyes sharp yet sorrowful. "It was Daniel's idea that I work at the restaurant. He wanted me to see how the Ashfords treated those with less power, the very people you once dismissed as insignificant." The words hit Edward like iron. "It was a test," Clara continued, her hand instinctively resting on her belly. "A test of whether reconciliation was possible." Edward collapsed into his leather chair, his empire of glass and steel suddenly feeling fragile. "And my son struck you." "Your son assaulted his uncle's pregnant wife," Clara said steadily, "the woman carrying his future cousin, the life your brother cherishes more than his own." At that moment, the door creaked open. A tall, broad-shouldered man entered, his presence filling the room. Though 15 years had passed, Edward knew instantly who it was. Daniel Ashford, now 45, stood like a soldier forged by war, yet softened by wisdom. His movements bore military precision, but his gray eyes held compassion, something Edward had long since buried. "Hello, brother," Daniel greeted, calm but firm. Edward rose slowly, staring at the man he once admired, now returned as both a stranger and a mirror of his own failures. "Daniel, I thought you were gone forever." "For you, I was dead the moment you discarded Maria," Daniel replied coldly. "She gave 20 years of her life to our family, and when she fell ill with cancer, you cast her out without pension, without dignity. Do you remember? Because I do." That day revealed who you truly were. Edward shut his eyes, crushed beneath the memory that had haunted his conscience for decades. "That choice," Daniel continued, his tone unyielding, "is why I severed every tie. It's why I never looked back moving toward Clara." He laid a protective hand over her belly. "When my wife told me what your son did, my blood burned with rage. My instinct was to face him man to man, to show him how cowards who harm women are dealt with." Edward swallowed hard, shame coursing through him. "But Clara," Daniel said, softening as he glanced at her, "convinced me to allow another path, to test if anything salvageable remained in him." He walked to the panoramic window, gazing at the city skyline. "For weeks, I've monitored Logan's progress at the hospital. I know he resisted at first, tried to wield his name, to bend rules. I know he cursed and protested. His voice grew quieter. But I also know that yesterday he helped a frightened teenager navigate medical forms. I know 3 nights ago he stayed behind to clean up after an emergency when no one asked him to. I know he has begun to treat the nurses with respect." Turning back, his eyes locked with Edward's. "The boy is changing. The question is whether it is genuine, or simply desperation." Clara rose, her movements slow but resolute under the weight of late pregnancy. "That's why we propose one final test. In 2 weeks, when our child comes into the world, Logan will be there. He will see the life he endangered take its first breath. Only then can he truly confront the gravity of his actions. And only then, Daniel added, stepping forward, will we decide if reconciliation is possible. A silence fell heavy in the office. Edward's throat tightened. And if he fails, if he cannot change? Daniel gathered the photographs back into his briefcase. His voice carried both finality and sorrow. Then I will know the Ashford name is beyond redemption. And I will walk away for good. The couple departed, leaving the office cold and vast. Alone before the glittering skyline, Edward realized for the first time in decades that money could not shield him. The true empire at stake was not built of glass or steel, but of family. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Logan's 6th week began. He arrived before dawn, before the nurses, his calloused hands laying out supplies with quiet diligence. The complaints had stopped. The uniform, the acrid scent of disinfectant, these no longer weighed on him. Something inside him had shifted. That morning, an emergency case burst into the hospital. An 18-year-old girl in premature labor. Her name was Andrea, and she arrived alone, trembling, her clothes damp with tears and fear. "I don't have money," she repeated between sobs, her voice raw. "My boyfriend left me when he found out I was pregnant. My family threw me out of the house. I can't pay. I can't pay." Dr. Ramirez, a 50-year-old man infamous for his sharp temper, approached with irritation clear in every gesture. "If you can't pay, go to the public hospital," he snapped, his tone dripping with disdain. "We're not a charity here." From the hallway, Logan froze, anger surging inside him like a spring finally released. Without thinking, he stepped forward. "Dr. Ramirez," he said firmly, "I'll take care of Andrea's expenses." The doctor blinked in disbelief. "You? A volunteer? You'll pay the bill of a stranger you just met?" "Yes," Logan answered without hesitation. His voice carried an authority born not of wealth, but of conviction. "And if you have a problem with that, you can explain it to the administration." For the first time in his life, he used his family name not for privilege, not to escape responsibility, but to shield someone else. Andrea's watery eyes lifted to him, full of gratitude. "I don't know how to thank you." "Don't thank me," he replied gently. "Save your strength. Focus on bringing your baby into the world safely." Hours passed, and Logan remained at her side through the grueling labor. He held her hand when the contractions tore through her, whispered encouragement when fear threatened to consume her, and brought her water when exhaustion left her lips dry. When the newborn finally arrived, a healthy boy weighing 6 pounds and 3 ounces, Logan felt a wave of emotion he had never known. The sight of that fragile life, breathing because he had intervened, filled him with more pride than any luxury car or exotic vacation ever had. "What will you name him?" Logan asked softly. "Andrew," Andrea said, her eyes glowing as she cradled her son. "After the angel who helped me when I needed it most." Logan stepped out of the room, his vision blurred with unshed tears. In the hallway, he ran into Martha Collins, the head nurse who had once treated him with icy disdain. "You did something good today, boy," Martha said, her lips curving into the first genuine smile she had ever given him. "That baby has a future thanks to you." "I only did what any decent person would," Logan replied quietly. "No, Logan," she corrected, her voice firm. "Not anyone. In 30 years, I've seen plenty of rich men walk past suffering without lifting a finger. You chose differently." Later that afternoon, while he was organizing medical records, Clara arrived for her final checkup before delivery. Her swollen belly preceded her, and she moved with the slow grace of a woman near the end of pregnancy. She paused by the desk where Logan sat. "I heard what you did for Andrea," she said softly. Logan looked up, bracing himself for sarcasm. Instead, he found her eyes carrying something closer to respect. "She needed help," he answered simply. "Yes, she did. And you gave it without expecting anything in return." She placed her hands protectively over her stomach, her voice low but steady. "These weeks, I've been watching you. At first, I thought it was just an act, but I've seen how you talk to patients. I've seen you stay long after your shift when emergencies hit. I've seen how you look at newborns, as though for the first time you understand what life truly means." A knot tightened in Logan's throat. "Clara, that night, what I did to you, I can't forgive it," she cut him off sharply. Her tone left no room for argument. "That kick could have killed my child. It could have killed me." Silence settled, heavy as stone. "But," she continued, softening slightly, "I can believe in what you're becoming. That matters more than forgiveness." She turned and walked toward the doctor's office, leaving Logan staring after her, her words echoing in his mind. 3 nights later, at 2 in the morning, the hospital alarm blared. Clara had gone into labor. Logan was finishing his night shift when he saw Daniel storming down the corridor, carrying his wife in his arms. The face of the hardened ex-soldier was now etched with panic, the terror of a man who had faced bullets unflinching but could not bear to see the woman he loved in pain. "Where's the doctor?" Daniel roared. "My wife is bleeding." The on-call physician rushed forward with a team of nurses. After a tense examination, he looked up. "It's a minor complication. The baby is in the wrong position, but we can manage it. Prepare her for emergency surgery." The next 2 hours stretched like an eternity. Daniel paced the hall like a trapped lion, fists clenching and unclenching, his eyes betraying the fear he refused to voice. After watching him suffer in silence for nearly an hour, Logan finally walked toward him. "Sir." "Uncle," Logan corrected himself, his voice trembling. Can I sit with you?" Daniel turned toward him, surprised at the hesitation in his nephew's tone. "You don't need to do this, Logan." "Yes, I do," the young man answered firmly. "That woman, her baby, I once put them in danger. I can't walk away now. I need to stay here until I know they're safe." The 2 men lowered themselves into the hard plastic chairs of the waiting room. The silence that followed was heavy, charged with 15 years of family estrangement and 6 weeks of an unexpected transformation neither had anticipated. "When you were little," Daniel said suddenly, his voice softer, "you used to follow me everywhere. You told everyone you wanted to be a soldier like me." A faint, sad smile crossed Logan's face. "I remember. Back then, you were my hero. Do you know why I really left the family?" Daniel asked, leaning forward, elbows pressed against his knees. Logan shook his head silently. "Because I saw what money was doing to all of you," his uncle continued. "I saw how your father treated workers like disposable tools. I heard your mother mocking people who had less, and I saw you and Victoria grow up believing you were somehow superior just because of privilege." He drew a long breath. "In the army, I learned something different. A person's worth isn't in what they own, but in what they are willing to give up for others. That's why I chose distance, because I refuse to be part of that cycle. And that's why what you're doing now matters. You're sacrificing comfort, image, pride, to serve women you once dismissed as beneath you." Before Logan could answer, the doors swung open. The doctor emerged, surgical mask hanging loose around his neck, fatigue etched on his face. But he was smiling. "Mr. Ashford, congratulations. You have a beautiful, healthy son. Your wife is safe as well." All the air seemed to leave Daniel's chest at once. He collapsed into the chair, burying his face in his hands before letting out a shuddering sigh of relief. "Can I see them?" "Of course. They're resting in room 304. As they headed down the corridor, Daniel suddenly stopped, turning to his nephew. "Come, I want you to meet your cousin." Together, they entered the quiet hospital room. Clara, exhausted but glowing with the unshakable radiance of motherhood, lay cradling a tiny bundle swaddled in a soft blue blanket. "Daniel," she whispered, her voice hoarse but full of joy. "Look how perfect he is." Daniel bent down, kissing her forehead with a tenderness that pierced Logan's chest. He had never witnessed such pure, selfless love. "What should we name him?" Daniel asked softly. "Gabriel," Clara replied, tears sparkling in her eyes. "Like the archangel who protects families." From the doorway, Logan stood frozen, his heart thundering. That child, sleeping so peacefully, was the same life he had once endangered with a single cruel act. That woman, now radiant with happiness, had once trembled under his arrogance. "Logan," Clara called gently, "come closer." He approached with hesitant steps as though the ground itself had become sacred. "Do you want to hold him?" she asked. I don't think I should," he admitted, his hands trembling. "I want you to," she insisted, softly but firmly. "Feel the weight of the life you've helped protect these past weeks." Slowly, with reverence, Logan accepted the baby into his arms. Gabriel was impossibly small, impossibly fragile, yet perfectly complete. Tiny fingers wrapped instinctively around his own, and in that instant, something inside Logan Ashford shattered. The walls of arrogance, entitlement, and disdain he had built over 22 years crumbled like brittle glass. Hot tears blurred his vision, and he began to cry. Not the spoiled cries of a boy denied luxury, but the raw, liberating sobs of a man finally touched by truth. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice breaking. He looked at Gabriel, then at Clara, then at Daniel. "I'm so sorry." "We know," Daniel said quietly, placing a firm hand on his nephew's shoulder. "And because you finally understand, we can begin again, as a family." Outside, dawn broke, painting the horizon in gold and crimson, as if the world itself celebrated not only Gabriel's birth, but Logan's rebirth. 5 years later, the Ashford family house garden no longer resembled the cold monument it once was. The marble statues had been replaced by fruit trees, their branches heavy with gifts for neighborhood children. The pristine, forbidden lawn had given way to a playground, echoing with laughter each afternoon. Now 27, Logan gently pushed the swing where his cousin Gabriel laughed with the carefree joy of 5-year-olds. The boy had inherited the family's signature gray eyes, but carried his mother's warm, unshakable smile. "Uncle Leo," Gabriel chirped, "will you tell me again about the time you worked in the hospital?" "Again," Logan laughed. "I've already told you that story 1,000 times." "But I love it," the child insisted. "Especially the part where you helped Andrea's baby be born." Logan smiled, his heart swelling. Andrea and her son Andrew, now 5 as well, had become part of the extended family. Andrew attended the private school the Ashfords had transformed, once an elite institution, now a sanctuary of scholarships for low-income children. "All right, but afterward you have to promise you'll help me set the table," Logan replied with a playful smile. From the terrace of the family home, Clara stood watching the two with soft eyes, one hand resting gently on her round belly. She was expecting again, a little girl who would be named Hope. This time, it was Logan who had been the very first to step forward, always asking how she was, always offering to carry bags, accompany her to checkups, or simply keep her company when fatigue weighed heavily. Daniel approached quietly from behind, wrapping his strong arms around his wife's waist, his hands covering hers. "What's going through your mind?" he asked in a low, affectionate voice. "That life is strange," Clara answered thoughtfully. 5 years ago, I could never have imagined we would have a family this beautiful, or that my brother would become the man he is now." Edward Ashford, transformed by age and by his son's redemption, had retired early. The man who once ran an empire with a clenched fist had redirected his energy toward good. He created a foundation that gave dignified work and medical insurance to single mothers, and in his free time, he preferred fishing trips with Gabriel, guiding the boy patiently by the small pond he had built in the garden. Victoria, Logan's younger sister, had also undergone her own renewal. Inspired by her brother's transformation, she founded and now directed a shelter for vulnerable pregnant women, giving them protection and hope. "Dad, can I stay for dinner tonight?" Logan asked as he came up the terrace stairs, holding Gabriel's small hand. "This is your home, son," Edward replied warmly. "You can always stay." But everyone knew that Logan now had his own apartment near St. Raphael Hospital, where he worked as volunteer coordinator. Having completed his nursing studies, he specialized in neonatal care. His mission was to help other young men and women of privilege discover what he had discovered, that real value lies in service. Later, in the kitchen, the family prepared dinner together. Gabriel chattered endlessly about his day at school, his stories bubbling with the innocent joy of childhood. He had inherited Clara's gift for making friends easily and Daniel's quiet determination. "Uncle Leo, is it true you used to be bad?" the boy suddenly asked, his wide eyes full of childlike frankness. Logan froze mid-motion with the knife, then crouched down to meet his cousin at eye level. "Yes, Gabriel, I used to be very bad. I hurt your mom when she was pregnant with you. But you're not bad anymore," the child countered without hesitation. "I try to be good every day," Logan confessed softly. "Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's hard. But you help me remember why it's worth it." Gabriel pondered this deeply, his small brow furrowed with unexpected gravity. "Mom says people can change if they really want to." "Your mom is right. She's very smart," Logan replied, smiling faintly. "She also says you changed because you learned how to love." The words hit Logan with a force greater than any reprimand. His throat tightened. Even after 5 years, his little cousin's simple truths could still move him to tears. "Do you love me, Uncle Leo?" "I love you more than my own life, Gabriel." "Then that's why you're good now." Dinner that night was filled with laughter, shared stories, and dreams of the future. Daniel recounted tales from his military years, carefully omitting the darker parts. Clara spoke about progress at the shelter. Edward contributed his wisdom, offering small comments where they mattered most. When bedtime arrived, the family carried out their nightly ritual together. Logan read a short story, Daniel hummed an old military lullaby, Clara kissed her son's forehead, and Edward promised another fishing lesson the next day. "Good night, family," Gabriel whispered with a sleepy smile before drifting off. Later, on the terrace under a canopy of stars, the adults sipped coffee. Logan, staring at the heavens, finally said, "Do you know what's strangest about all this? I'm happier now, working shifts at the hospital and living on my salary, than I ever was with unlimited cards and luxury cars. That's because you finally learned the difference between price and value," Daniel explained. "What's the difference?" Daniel gestured toward the window where Gabriel slept peacefully. "Price is what you pay. Value is what you get in return. That child has no price, but his value is infinite." Logan nodded, his heart swelling with understanding. Forgiveness, true love, second chances, none could ever be measured in numbers. When he said goodbye and drove toward his apartment, he stopped at a red light. On the sidewalk, he noticed a young woman struggling to walk, her hands pressed protectively over her pregnant belly. She looked lost and exhausted. Without hesitation, Logan stepped out of his car. "Excuse me, miss, do you need help?" The woman eyed him cautiously at first, but something in his gaze softened her fear. "I'm looking for St. Raphael Hospital. They told me they accept emergencies, even if you can't pay." "I work there," Logan assured her gently. "I can take you." "Really?" she whispered in disbelief. "Of course. Please, get in." I'll take you right away." As they drove through the quiet streets, Logan reflected on all the times in his past he had walked past suffering without even seeing it. He thought of the night he had hurt Clara, and how that one terrible act had become the seed of the greatest transformation in his life. He thought about Gabriel sleeping soundly in his little bed, about Clara carrying her second child, about Daniel, who had chosen to extend redemption rather than revenge. He thought of Andrea and her son, Andrew, of the dozens of mothers he had supported during these past 5 years, of the fragile newborns he had welcomed into the world with his own hands. When they finally reached the hospital, Logan guided the young pregnant woman through the registration process and personally ensured she was taken into the emergency ward without delay. Relieved, he walked back toward the parking lot, only to find a folded slip of paper tucked carefully beneath his windshield wiper. Opening it, he read, "Thank you for proving that angels still exist on Earth. Maria Fernanda." For a long moment, Logan stood frozen, the note trembling in his fingers. He slipped it into his wallet, right next to the worn photograph of himself holding newborn Gabriel for the very first time, a picture that had become his compass, his reminder of the night his life truly changed. That evening, before surrendering to sleep, he opened the leather-bound diary he had kept faithfully since the beginning of his transformation. With slow, deliberate strokes, he wrote, "Dear future me, tonight, little Gabriel asked if I used to be bad. I answered honestly, but in doing so, I realized something greater. I was never truly bad, only lost. I mistook privilege for superiority. I mistook dominance for strength. I mistook price for value. Now I see. True strength is in protecting the vulnerable. True wealth is in the love we offer and receive. True greatness lies not in being served, but in serving. Tomorrow will bring another chance to live this truth, another chance to honor the second life I was given, another chance to prove that change is real for those who truly desire it. Gabriel was right. I changed because I learned how to love, and each passing day, that love grows stronger. Good night, world. Thank you for reminding me that it's never too late to be reborn." In the quiet stillness of the city, somewhere within the walls of St. Raphael Hospital, a young woman named Maria Fernanda rested peacefully, comforted by the knowledge that help had arrived in her darkest hour. Inside a family home that had finally learned what it meant to be a true home, 5-year-old Gabriel dreamed of tales filled with second chances. And deep within the heart of Logan Ashford, the conviction only grew stronger, that some mistakes can be covered with money, but others can only be healed through forgiveness and love. This story finds its conclusion here, but perhaps your story of transformation is just beginning. Have you ever lived through a forgiveness that reshaped your entire life? Do you know someone who discovered their best self only after making their worst mistake? Have you witnessed the way true love can turn even the most lost person into a beacon of hope? We all face moments where we must choose to be the Logan from the restaurant or the Logan from the hospital, to be arrogant or to be humble, to wound or to heal, to close our hearts or to open them. If this story stirred something in you, if it reminded you that change is always possible, if it inspired you to show greater kindness to those carrying invisible burdens, then share it with someone who needs this message today. Subscribe to our channel for more stories that heal the spirit and celebrate the beauty of humanity. Every week, we bring you real journeys of redemption, forgiveness, and second chances. And please leave us a comment telling us where you're watching from. We love seeing these stories connect hearts across the globe, transcending language and culture. Because in the end, it isn't about how much money we stack in banks. What matters most is how much love we keep alive in our hearts and how much light we choose to spread in this world. Until the next story, may your days be full of blessings, and may you always find new chances to become the very best version of yourself.